So, have you ever seen a single social media post, just one repost, blow up into an international incident? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to break down. This isn't just about politics. It's really a masterclass in how communication works today and, how it can go spectacularly wrong. It always starts like this, right? You get that little breaking news alert, and you get that feeling like, okay, something big just went down. But then you look a little closer, and you start to wonder, is this really breaking news? Or is it just the same old cycle we've seen 100 times before? A wild statement gets made, and then comes the backlash. It's predictable. Let's look at the spark this time. And here it is. This is what kicked everything off. A post shared by Donald Trump that included a very simple, very direct, and, an incredibly provocative quote, calling India hell. This is where our story really begins. And that's the key question here. This wasn't some official policy announcement. It wasn't a formal declaration. It was just a repost, a click of a button. So how does that one action trigger actual diplomatic fallout? Let's get into the reaction. So the first ripple in this whole story, well, they came from a place that pretty much no one saw coming. And that adds a really fascinating layer to this whole mess. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. On one side, you have that reposted comment, and on the other, a sharp, direct comeback from Iran. Yeah, a country that's not exactly a U.S. ally, basically telling him, hey, maybe do your homework before you start talking. Just let that sink in for a minute. You have geopolitical rivals suddenly finding common ground, all because of one person's repost. It just goes to show you how a misstep on social media can completely scramble the usual political lines, even if it's just for a moment. So where did this crazy comment even come from? Well, it turns out it wasn't an original thought at all. To really get the full picture, we've got to trace this thing all the way back to its source. And this is a perfect example of the power of amplification. The original comment came from a radio host's rant about immigrants. It was kind of niche commentary. But with just one share from a huge public figure, it gets blasted onto the world stage. And just like that, a fringe opinion turns into a diplomatic incident. Look, this wasn't a random event. It's actually part of a very predictable pattern we see all the time in public life now. Let's call it the controversy cycle. It's this never-ending loop of provocation and, cleanup. It's basically a simple three-step dance. First, you've got the provocation. Someone shares something controversial and just waits for it to explode. Second, the backlash, which is inevitable. The media, other countries, they all react. And then third, you send someone else in to do the cleanup. And right on cue, here comes the cleanup crew. The U.S. Embassy puts out a statement that basically says, hey, pay no attention to that post over there. He actually thinks India is great. I mean, it is a classic case of damage control, long after the damage has already been done. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it all comes down to the new rules of being online, a little something called digital responsibility, and what it means to actually own the consequences. Here's the reality check. It doesn't matter if we're talking about today or 2026 or 10 years from now. The old excuses, they just don't work anymore. The roles have completely changed. A repost is not a passive thing anymore. It's an endorsement. The whole idea of plausible deniability is dead. In today's world, you don't even have to say the controversial thing yourself. Just sharing it is enough. If you share it, you own it. You're responsible. The old attitude was always about being bold, speaking without any fear. It was about being totally unfiltered, saying whatever popped into your head. But that era is over. Because when you get rid of the fear and you get rid of the filters, what's left? Just consequences. That's the new reality. A simple share has real weight. And in the court of global opinion, there's no difference between the person who wrote something and the person who amplified it. So the real question is, are we ready to own what we share?